Shenmue III is real. I still can't believe this is 2 days later now, and I still tear up watching the footage of the announcement at E3. It's just so unbelievable for so many reasons. It's something that I've been waiting for 14 years, something that I'd given up on, something that was a running joke, something like saying, StarCraft Ghost is going to come out, or there's a possibility of, like, Square's going to remake Final Fantasy VII, which somehow magically also happened in the same E3, and The Last Guardian's finally going to come out, and it was unbelievable. It was almost too much. I couldn't handle it, and it was incredible. And that night, it was so hard. My wife was just dead asleep when this announcement came on, and it was so hard not to just scream in the middle of my apartment and just go nuts and just trying to keep all that in and just crying. I've never, it seems ridiculous. It seems absurd. I've never felt so much emotion for something, for a game. I mean, just to start crying because of its announcement. It seemed like such an impossible dream, and it means so much because it's not just Shenmue 3. It's what Shenmue 3 represents for the entire gaming industry. It's something that goes beyond just a single game. The industry as a whole, over the seventh generation, and particularly the first couple years into this eighth generation, where it became far too corporatized. It moved beyond what gaming for gamers. There were still amazing games, obviously. I mean, it's one of those things where the video game industry as a whole was headed for a crash. Not in terms of the 1983 crash in any way. It's way much too big of an economic beast worldwide for something like that to happen. But a crash in terms of the current state, the current structure of the gaming industry couldn't hold for that much longer. Something where tons of yearly series that are incredibly glitchy are not going to sustain the industry, releasing lots of on-disc DLC, all these bizarre practices, the exploding cost of gaming, the cost of creating games has gone beyond what it should be, and it's bringing it to the point where if a company has a failure, they're more than likely gone, and it means that the majority of companies are no longer, especially larger, bigger budget companies and publishers, are no longer taking the risks and adding in the creativity that was present in older generations of gaming. And that's not to say there aren't games that do that. Obviously there are. That's like saying, when the housing bubble burst in North America, there wasn't a single home built anywhere. That's absurd. There still are examples of just near perfection, something like the creativity of just like Fragile Dreams or like the success of Xenoblade, but it was so far and few and just in between. It was not what it used to be, and part of it was the corporate structure took the power away from a lot of creators. It became more about the bottom line, more about the money versus the creativity, and not realizing that part of what made massive successes in previous generations was that innovation and creativity, and that came from taking a risk. And rather than that, it's more of you need a guaranteed number rather than something that could be a massive hit or a failure. And it's really stagnated. And the rise of indie gaming, the rise of things like Steam, the rise of that's where all the creativity has been coming from, has been a wonderful thing, but it doesn't hold up the structure of gaming the way it is today. And just the over-bloated, people don't realize, it's like people comparing how certain bands today have outsold the Beatles. It's because it's a different world. More people have access to more things. There's larger populations. Console sales are way down. Even PC gaming, while there is a rise of content through things like Steam, stuff is just not where it used to be. People are leaving that core demographic of gaming, and an industry this size can't hold and needs to go through a radical transformation. And before the release of the Kickstarter for Shenmue 3, I really feel that transformation would have been incredibly rough, that it would have been a crash of the structure and a rebuilding into a bigger, better gaming industry. But something like Shenmue 3 is sort of the crowning jewel, showing that the gaming industry as a whole can go through this transformation without going through that destructive, rough patch. I feel like it's already becoming that point of desperation where something like Square Enix has to bring in their last sort of like big trump card. Shenmue 3, like people, it's the finally an example of, I mean, you have things like Mighty Number 9, you have like Keiji Inafune and everybody, like people leaving companies like Capcom, people leaving companies like Konami and having like Bloodstained, having these great epic, Kickstarter campaigns that really show that the true heart of gaming is in these creators and not in this corporate structure. But Shenmue 3 is finally an example of how those two things can exist in the same world and can actually work together. It's showing that this transformation will happen. The type of gaming that we love will not die. The type of gaming that we love will not be relegated to just digital only indie stuff, which is wonderful in its own right, but in a way we also want wonderful creativity to be in the forefront. We want the idea of nostalgia to not be relegated just to the past. I mean, we're looking here, it's 2015, and we're getting a sequel to a Dreamcast game. I'm shaking a little bit. It's still just days later, it's still just so unbelievable. It's the impossible dream. Shenmue 3, it's incredible. Shenmue was such a wonderful experience for me, and Shenmue 2 was the entire reason I got an original Xbox, and finally I've now been able to experience it on the Dreamcast through the Japanese version, and just it's wonderful. It's unbelievable, and there are people out there who just don't understand not just how amazing Shenmue is. You have to have experienced not only Shenmue 1 and 2, the games themselves, but to be a part of a 14-year journey and struggle. And it just, as someone who is really into the creation of content, someone who loves to write, to create, to really be a part of that process, to see someone, a creator, to see someone like Yu Suzuki just give his heart and soul for 14 years to something, not releasing, even just sort of a web document or like a book or something saying, this is the rest of Shenmue, it's never going to happen, here's the rest of the story. We don't know the rest of the story. We know a few little details. We know the general structure of what that story would have been beyond Shenmue 2, but we don't know like the actual story. To keep that hidden, to keep that within him, to have such a strong belief that this thing will someday exist, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. It's something that goes, again, like I said, it goes beyond Shenmue 3. Shenmue 3 is this symbol now. It is not just a game. Shenmue 3 is a symbol to rally around. It's something that anyone who is a creator should support. Anyone who loves video games should support. Anyone who wants to see gaming become something where creativity and originality and quality is not relegated to hidden gems, something where that is the forefront, something where we can have a new revolution, a new golden age of gaming, and Shenmue 3 can't bring that on by itself, but it can be that beginning, that shining example, that beacon of cooperation between fans and in the side of business. It's not two opposite sides, fighting against each other. It's people, it's things that can work together. And there are people who have criticized Sony for not immediately just backing this and not taking it away from being a Kickstarter, and some people I know have even avoided donating now to the Kickstarter because Sony's officially announced their involvement, and thinking that, well, why am I going to give money to this thing that a giant corporation like Sony is just going to throw money at and really help produce? And it's not really what's happening here. The Kickstarter is actually the perfect way this could have happened. It would not have been what it is without it being a Kickstarter rather than Sony just funding it. It still would have been Shenmue 3. It still would have been an example of all these things I've been saying. But, oh my gosh, Shenmue 3. Shenmue 3 as a Kickstarter is a way, it really shows that this industry and the creativity comes from the love of a creator for a product, working with his fans, making it one thing, and going through and looking through the Kickstarter and realizing not just the extras that you get for different levels of donation, but how you're involved, how you are now a part of this creative process, doing things like certain levels. You get your name in the credits with what's going to be thousands upon thousands of people, but you get your name in the credits of this thing. You get to be a part of, putting your vote in for certain polls and things, and being able to help it reach goals for features that you want in the game to make it a bigger and better experience. And Sony is not going to throw a ton of money at something like this because it is the representation of a huge risk. It's something that is beloved by so many people worldwide, but for the production that it is, Sega hasn't touched it in so long because it has always been a risk, particularly coming just from financially from a corporate structure rather than going through the public and the fans. And Sony, as a safeguard, which makes perfect sense, needed to see physically not just the voices being heard, but people saying and showing through their actions that this is something they want to support and it will be supported, and it is not the risk that people thought it was. It will be a success. It's something that is just this wonderful, beautiful thing. Shenmue 3 is absolutely, it's beautiful, it's incredible, it's remarkable. It is going to be this sort of seminal experience of gaming as a whole. It is the thing where through this Kickstarter, fans will be part of the creative process, fans will be able to support it, fans will be more hands-on than something that was simply just a project by Sony being announced. It is something where we as people who have been waiting for well over a decade to hear the ending of a story, to continue a journey, to have something so important from such an early part of our lives to come back and be a part of just an adulthood, or just people experience it when they're young, or to be just being in a whole different part of your life, no matter who you are, no matter how old you were when it came about, to be in a whole different part of your life and have this experience return. It's such a beautiful thing, and it needs to be supported. And please, no matter who you are, just if you've never played Shenmue before, find Shenmue 1 and 2 and play it. Just pledge $5. If you, like I said, if you are anyone who is into creativity, if you understand the struggle of a creator of something beautiful and a fan base struggling for 14 years to see the continuation of a story, pledge $5. It's not much, and it's something, every little bit counts, and you can still, at the $5 level, you still see the interaction, you still get to vote on polls, you're still a part of that community, you can still be a part of the message board on the Kickstarter, you can still find your way into where this is going to be going. Shenmue 3 is a wonderful thing that needs to be supported, not just for what it is, not just because it's Shenmue 3, but because of what it represents. It's a beautiful thing, and it's sort of magical timing. I'm in the middle of this Summer of Sega that I'm doing, and I'm going to be doing my review of the first Shenmue in July. I'm going to be doing an experience with my review of Shenmue 2 in August, and I'm saying right now, right here, I'm promising that until the day that Shenmue 3 is released, I'm doing one video a month dedicated to Shenmue in some form, whether that is just updates on the game's progress, whether that is just sort of gameplay of sort of little hidden Easter eggs, whether that's just interviewing other people about their experiences with Shenmue, and something in some form every month until this thing is in my hands, until I'm physically playing it. There's going to be something about Shenmue on my channel, because I feel this is so important, and I'm so just emotionally invested, and I still can't believe just days later how emotionally invested I am in something that is a game. Shenmue 3, please support it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that if you're into gaming at all, if you're into the creative process, if you're into any form of media, show your support for something like this so that we can see things like this happen in the future, so we can see companies realize that you can go back to these old IPs and just revive them, resurrect them. You can create new IPs that are incredibly innovative and that are challenging, and things that are a massive, massive risk. You can do it, and you don't need to have these giant overflated budgets to do it. You can do something. I mean, it's just Shenmue 3. I still can't believe it's happening. It doesn't feel real. Please support Shenmue 3.